We have our final session for this series, and inshallah we will also meet tomorrow night, but that will be to have a good time, and that will be to enjoy ourselves and to have a hafla, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, a halal hafla, totally halal. So you're most welcome to come. Tonight, I hope I can finish this topic of Ghibah, and we want to speak about backbiting in the heart. Very important. And then, when is it permissible to backbite? When is it permissible to talk about other people's faults? Extremely important. And what do we do about haram backbiting? How do we atone for it? So all of these are very important, and I hope that we can get through them, because I think each of them has to be discussed, and unfortunately we won't be coming back to this topic anytime soon. Ghibah of the heart. So this is very important. Do we backbite people in our hearts? Yes, we do. Because we have opinions about them. We carry on discussions about them in our hearts. We have good opinions of them and bad opinions of them. And here, the ghibah of the heart exists in an intermediate space, a barzakh, between ghibah and buhtan. Ghibah, of course, always involves the truth. Backbiting is never a lie. The person always has that attribute that we disclose, but they don't want us to disclose it. It hurts them, it makes them unhappy. And buhtan, as you know, is a lie. It's slander. And in the heart, a lot of the things that are actually backbiting of the heart are really closer to slander, simply because usually we don't know. We have an opinion of a person because of the way they look, because of the way they act, maybe because of things we've heard, but we don't know. And we form a negative opinion. And then usually it affects our behavior. Often it ruins the relationship from the very beginning. So backbiting of the heart is something extremely important. And Imam al-Ghazali wants us to know that. Again, watch your heart. The more you know about your heart, the more you can see. And this is why it's so important to learn about the heart. And once you do that, then you will be able to see what's happening in yourself. One of the things we know about the heart is that the heart has in it involuntary aspects and voluntary aspects. We call these khawatir. So the khawatir are involuntary suggestions. And this is where everything begins. You have involuntary suggestions, khawatir, that come to you from yourself, from your psyche, from your ego. And you have involuntary suggestions that come to you from Satan. And you have involuntary suggestions that come to you from the angels. And you have involuntary suggestions that come to you from God. So this is where it all begins. And whenever we have an involuntary suggestion, as long as it's just a suggestion, it's not good or bad. It is not moral or immoral. Even though the thing that occurs to us, or maybe the thing we dream about, may be so ugly, we are ashamed of it. Probably because it's from Satan, or probably because it's from the lower self. Okay, but that doesn't mean you're a bad person. And you are not culpable because you had that thought. That all comes about when you begin to process that suggestion. So, are you inclined to it or not? Are you desirous of doing that thing or not? Even that is called involuntary. Because it's just the beginning of the wation. Then you're still all right. You still haven't entered into moral, ethical ground. But all of that changes when we come to what we call al-aqd, which is commitment, acceptance, hem, which is strong desire to do the thing, and the desire to act. Okay, that I got this inclination, I inclined towards it, maybe I should have, maybe it was good, maybe I shouldn't have because it was bad, and then I become convinced that I would like to do this. If it's a good thing, that's good. If it's a bad thing, this is the beginning of wrong action. And this is not voluntary anymore. This is not involuntary anymore. This is voluntary. And therefore it's also moral and ethical. And then ultimately you have intention. Like, I'm going to do it. If it's good, wonderful. If it's bad, not wonderful. Even if you stop there, God will bless you and He will give you a great reward. But that was an immoral action if it was wrong. So this is also the way the heart works. This is where Ghibah of the heart begins. Okay, because Ghibah of the heart begins often as something involuntary. But very soon it becomes something voluntary, that you attach to this idea that you have about the person. And again, you may know what you're talking about in your heart. And again, you may not know. But once we begin to form a strong opinion that this person's not good, this person is such and such, then we have to be really careful about that. Because unless there is some strong justification for that, and we will talk about those justifications tonight, inshallah, then you don't want that in your heart. And that Ghibah of the heart, it festers in the heart. It festers, it grows, it rots, and it may make it impossible for us to deal with other people. And often we have that so much with so many people that we become antisocial. We can't even interact with people anymore. We live in an age of the autonomous individual. We live in an age that is telling us, and especially our children and young people, be yourself, be authentic, be genuine, make meaning in your life, do what you want to do. And in order for me to become a true human being, I have got to have standards outside of my heart. I have got to have points of reference outside of myself. So I need to have counselors. The believer is the counselor of the believer. The believer is the mirror of the believer. And then, of course, among believers we have people that are gifted with the power to guide and to give counsel. And this is one of the problems we have today, because in this culture, this monoculture, this global culture of the autonomous individual, It's very hard for many people, especially young people, to find the points of reference and to take them seriously. And it's very hard for them to hold to the standards and to believe that those standards are correct. And everything in the world is telling them, don't do that. You be yourself. You do what you want to do. You dress the way you want to do. The way you want to dress. You know, you go to sleep when you want to go to sleep. You get up when you want to get up. And, so this destroys the heart. And in fact, one of the things that we know is that in order for us to know ourselves, we have to know how weak we are. We have to know how dependent we are. We have to know our essential attributes. And this becomes almost too painful to bear for many people today, because they're not taught that. You know, you're wonderful. You do what you want to do. Whatever you feel is right is right. And so this is a course that leads to self-destruction. The muwaffaq, the person who has tawfiq, the man or woman who has success in this world and the next, is the one who learns to observe the movements of his or her heart and is able and willing to balance, to weigh them carefully in the balance of Sharia, the balance of the prophetic law, and the balance of intellect, al-aql, and also the balance of experience. Because our experiences are very significant. You know, how many people have you known in your life? How many times have you been betrayed in your life? How many times have you been hurt in your life? How many times have you also had wonderful things happen in your life? That's your experience. You can't turn your back on that. You know, but you've got to be able to use your experience and the law of the prophets and your intellect, you know, to weigh things. And this is what you do with your heart also. One of the things is that most people, it is natural for us that we blindly accept whatever occurs in the heart. Again, in the age of the autonomous individual, it's almost unthinkable that they not do this. What is more me than what occurs to me? What is more myself than what I want to do? What is more fulfilling? You know, what is more authentic than to do what I want to do? And yet that is your destruction. And this is very difficult for anyone to understand. But it's also extremely difficult for many young people today to understand. And we have to understand that you can't trust everything that's here. You've got to trust God. You've got to trust the Prophet ﷺ. You've got to trust your mentors. You've got to be able to have primary friends who are good, who can be mirrors for you. Why is that? Because what comes from me is generally not very good. What comes from me is generally coming from my lower ego. It is generally coming from my psyche. And it doesn't mean that it's all wrong, but it's always mixed, and often it is wrong. And then it's coming also from Satan and from the demonic world. That happens too. And then it's coming also from the angels. And it's also coming from God. That's what we want. We want the suggestions that are coming from God. We want the suggestions that are coming from the angels. And this means that I have got to pay attention to what is going on inside of me. There is a drama there. There is a cosmic drama there. And I've got to know how to make my way through that. I've got to know how to negotiate it. And if I do that, then I will be well. And we'll see tonight that when you begin to deal with the Ghibah of the heart, Satan ultimately will give up on you. Because you can do things in your response to Ghibah of the heart that will make shaitan not want to do that with you anymore. For example, when you have a bad opinion about somebody, make a dua for them. Shaitan loathes that. And this may in itself be something that makes him stop doing that because he doesn't want you to do that. So these are tricks against shaitan. Inna kayda shaitani kana da'ifa, that the trickery of Satan is weak. The plan of Satan is weak. So, Ghibah of the heart belongs to the category of su'al-dhann, of bad opinion. And the Prophet said, Husnul dhanni min husnul ibadah, min husnul ibadah. Good opinion belongs to good worship. And bad opinion is very, very dangerous. Again, we're always being tested because some of the people that we're around are not good. Some of the people around us are dangerous. And you've got to be smart. You've had a lot of experience. But be careful. Be careful, because this su'al-dhann, this bad opinion, it is more likely to be wrong than it is to be right. And even if it is right, this is something that you want to be very careful with and only use if you have to use it. Even if that person is a bad person. Even if that person does have a bad intention. Wouldn't it be good if he or she were brought to the truth? Wouldn't it be good if he or she were brought to be a good person? And you might be able to do that. So, and this is very true, because with the awliya, the great awliya, many of them are shown the secrets of people. They don't like to be shown that. And they don't expose that. Why does God show them that? So that they can help that person. So you can also do that. We should never write off anyone. And we should always hope that everyone can be transformed. Haven't we been transformed? We should never forget where we have been, what we have done. Even as a believer, even if all your life you were a believer, and even if you were a good person, haven't there been times when you lost strength, and when you began to fail, and when you did things that you never believed you would do, and then you got back on your feet, you did tawbah? You should never forget that dark moment, because that is what will keep you humble. That is what will protect you from the delusions of the self. So, the Ghibah of the heart and bad opinion, Imam al-Ghazali says, are both haram. That's their basic position. They're both haram. And this is when you speak to yourself in your heart of hearts, not to other people, about the faults of other people, real or imagined. Okay, and then we develop a bad opinion of them. Okay, and again, it may be that we have to do that. It may be that this person is bad, that they may be dangerous, they may be harmful for our children or our friends or others, but we have to have a strong justification for listening to that voice. Okay, and that justification has to be based on Sharia. It has to be based on prophetic law. It has to be based on intellect. It has to be based on practical experience. We've been burned here too many times. We're not going to be burned here again. Okay? And God forgives us the suggestions that occur to our hearts. God forgives us our doubts, our shukuk. But dhann, like bad opinion, it's actually stronger than that. Because su'al dhann is no longer a khatira. Su al-dhan is not an involuntary suggestion. It is a conviction. And generally it is a commitment. And as a rule, it is very harmful. Jesus said in the Gospels, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And this is true universally. Be careful not to judge other people. When you judge other people, you will also be judged. Everything in Islam is a balance. Because it's not like black and white. Some things in Islam, of course, are black and white. Some things are principial. They're not negotiable. They're always true. But most things are not black and white. And they're not gray either. They're different colors and different shades. And that's why you've got to use your head. You've got to think. You've got to exercise judgment. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. There's not always a simple answer. Every day we're put through situations where we have to use our minds. We have to make judgments. And we make so many mistakes. Right? Sometimes we make mistakes that are painful for us for years. Okay, but we ask Allah to forgive us, and we start again, and we try to do better. And this is the way that we develop intellectually and spiritually and otherwise. Imam al-Ghazali says the mark of Ghibah of the heart is something that I've mentioned now several times, and that's when you have the aqd. This is a very important word. The commitment, the conviction in a bad opinion about another person, and it then turns your heart against him or her. You can't trust them anymore. And you don't want to even be around them. And when they come in the room, you feel, oh my God, he's here or she's here, right? And we find their company heavy and unwelcome. It's hard to smile in their presence. And again, did you manufacture this in your heart? Do you really know this is true? Because if there's no strong justification for it, then this is evil. And this is the way that shaitan is dividing us. Imam al-Ghazali says, always try to escape from Ghibah of the heart by not allowing it to actualize itself as aqd, as a conviction, and not as a deed. I'll turn my back on him, or I'll come up and say something contentious in his face. No, don't do that. Stop short. And again, may we be truthful people. The truthful person has so many bounties, and one of them is that he or she can be truthful to himself or herself. So, do I really know this person? Did this really happen? And as long as I don't know that as a fact, can't you just postpone judgment? Can't you hold back on it? And can't you smile? Can't you have a good opinion? Can't you make dua for this person? Maybe he or she is that way. Maybe he or she is bad like that. So couldn't you make dua? That Allah forgive them? That Allah make them better? And what do you think Satan will think about that? It'll make him think twice before he gives you a bad opinion about anybody, because you're going to turn that over on him. Satan urges you to do both. He urges you to make that conviction and then do something about it. Get in his face. Get in her face. Okay, and then Shaitan, Imam al-Ghazali says, will whisper into your heart beautiful things about you. After all, you are a believer and you see with the light of God. So what you know about this person is an amazing reflection of your profundity. How did you come to know this? What an amazing person you are. And in reality, what is going on in our hearts is usually ghurur and dhulma. it is usually delusion and darkness, because that other person's reality almost always is veiled to you. How many times have you seen that in your life? How many times have I seen that in my life? That you had a bad opinion of somebody, and then when the story came out, you found out that there are all kinds of dimensions to this person you never understood. You maybe hate yourself for a day. How could I not have known this? How could I not have been merciful to this person? So Shaitan will try to, convince us that what you did is really a sign that you have a high spiritual status. You have insight that other people don't have. God is a sattar. God is the sattar. He is the satir. He veils us. He veils our faults. He covers our faults from others. And honor in Islam, which our sister asked about yesterday, the basic thing is honor. In honor is keep people covered. Don't rip that sitter apart. Do I have faults? I have countless faults. But I also have a right in Islam that they be covered. Right? And we have an obligation to cover each other. And that's why if someone backbites somebody else, you can say, that's not true. And here you are defending their honor, and God will defend your honor in turn. So when God has covered someone and they are not exposed, don't be you the one to expose them. And you make it a point to look out for them. You make it a point to defend them. You make it a point to speak good about them and make dua for them. This protects your heart. This drives Satan away. As we said before, it makes him regret that he even gave you that idea. It fills him with ghaiz, with burning anger. Okay, and this facilitates angelic inspiration. Because when the satanic suggestions and the demonic suggestions and the psychic ones from ourselves are gone, then the angels fill the vacuum. And then God himself gives you suggestions that are very beautiful. One of the worst consequences of su' al-dhann is tajassus, spying on others. Why? Because our heart is not really satisfied with dhann. Dhann is a conviction. I'm sure he's that way. I'm sure she's that way. But after all, it's not really proven. It's just a conviction. So we don't want to dismiss it, and we'd like to know that it's really true. We seek tahqiq, we want to verify it. So we begin to go through their emails. We begin to spy on them, ask about them. What do you know about them? And other things. Maybe if it's a neighbor, we look out the window to see what they're doing and things like that. And this comes from the refusal to leave God's servants, under his sitter, under his veil, the cover that he's put them in. We want to rip it apart. We want to look behind that, to reveal their faults, which we call in Arabic their nakedness, their awrah. Again, as the Prophet taught us, if you will cover the awrah of your brother or sister, their fault, that is like what? Bringing to life the infant girl who was buried alive. It's like bringing the maw'udah back to life. Because your brother's awrah, his fault, his blatant fault, was revealed and you covered it. You say, he's not like that. I'll stand up for him. He's a good man. And Allah then will say, you are like the person who brought the infant girl back to life, who was buried alive unjustly. That's a great thing. Allah says in the Quran, as you all know, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اجْتَنِبُوا كَثِيرًا مِنَ الظَّنِّ إِنَّ بَعْدَ الظَّنِّ إِثْمٌ وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. So Allah says in the Quran, O you who believe, put aside much dhann, strong opinion, conviction, okay? Because much dhann in it is evil, it is iniquitous. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, and don't spy on each other, and do not backbite each other. Imam al-Ghazali points out that in this verse, these three things are related to each other because they are tied to each other. Bad opinion, and then tajassus, and then ghibah. So these things go together and all of them are forbidden. This is the basic position of Islamic law. Okay, so now we want to talk about when is ghibah permissible. And here I want to preface what I say with an important rule of law. Hard cases make for bad law. Every lawyer knows what that means, right? Hard cases make for bad law. What does that mean? What it means is that when we study the law, whether it's Islamic law, or whether it is American law, or Egyptian law, or whatever it may be, you want to learn the law first. And you want to get it right as it is. Okay? And the hard cases, they come later. Hard cases are very important. Hard cases are where you have fatwas and other things. But many people, when they study law, whether it's American law, Egyptian law, or Islamic law, they immediately start asking the hard questions. What about this? What about this? What about this? And hard cases make for bad law. You don't want to get into that until you've got the foundation down. And the foundations are usually very simple. After that, you can then begin to deal with the hard cases. So I want to say that because we've said so much about ghibah. Ghibah is fisq. It is perversity. Ghibah is haram. Ghibah destroys your heart. And as the Prophet said, Ghibah is shadida jiddan. Because you can't just do tawbah from ghibah. You've got to be released from the person that you did ghibah against. And they don't usually let you go. And in fact, if there's any person you want to backbite in the world, who would that be? Your mother. Why? Because she deserves your hasanat better than anybody. Because when you do ghibah, you're going to give her your hasanat. See, once Al-Hasan al-Basri, may Allah be pleased with him, he heard that a particular person, was backbiting him, saying horrible things about him. So Al-Hasan al-Basri put together a big platter of dates, and he had someone send it to this man. And he said, "This is my gift to you. I heard that you gave me all your hasanat, and I wanted to give you something in return. I'm sorry I couldn't do better." So this is what you're doing. This is what you're doing. If we do ghibah, you're giving all your hasanat away. And everything in you has a place. Shuh, bukhl, avarice, and shuh is extreme bukhl. It has a place in your heart. Where should that be? Hasanat. I am shahih with my hasanat. I don't want to give any of them away. Right? So watch what you do with your tongue. Watch what you do with your tongue. That's with, so inshallah, Allah make us careful with what we do. So, in general, Ghibah is not allowed. That is the law. And now we're going to talk about some hard cases. This does not overturn what we said, but it just enables us to be more intelligent in the way that we apply it, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali says, Ghibah per se is haram. It is an act of fisq. How many times have we said that now? A dozen? It's very important. Just as lying per se is haram and fisq. But there are some times when they are allowed, and there are some times when they are required. So these are the hard cases. This is the gray area. This is the zone that's not necessarily white and black. And we have to be really careful that we don't understand this in a way that undercuts the whole thing. Because many people do that. Many people do that. Especially me, myself, and I. Right? And you hear a person who's doing lots of ghibah. And he'll sit down with you and he'll start telling you about these people. And it's like, oh my God, I don't want to hear this. He said, but we have to. This is so important. This pertains to the success of our project. Couldn't we start another project? Right? That's what happens, right? And it's like, this is so dangerous that we want to avoid it as far as possible. We don't want to give licenses to ourselves. And Imam al-Ghazali is going to help us with that. So, Imam al-Ghazali emphasizes that to speak about people's faults, which is essentially ghibah, the things they don't want you to talk about, you must have gharad sahih. You must have a sound, correct motive. And this must be sound in the Sharia, the prophetic law, and it must be sound in intellect, and it must be sound in terms of experience, the life you've lived, what you know. And before you do it, you must look for alternatives. That isn't there some other way that we can approach this matter? Isn't there some other way we can talk about it? Do we really have to be explicit? Is it really required of us to do this? So you want to look for another way. Look for another approach. Number one, Imam al-Ghazali says there's 6 basic situations in which ghibah is allowed or in which it may be even required. Number 1, when you have been abused, harmed, or oppressed, then you have a right, and sometimes you have an obligation to speak to somebody who can help you. That might be a powerful person, like in traditional Islamic societies, the sultan or the imam. It may be a judge in a court of law. It may be a lawyer. It may be the imam of the mosque, if he's worthy of that and trustworthy. It may be a healer, a counselor. It may be your best friend who can help you. But when we have been abused, when we have been oppressed and harmed, then that's not tolerant. That's not tolerable. Ad-darar yuzal. This is one of the 5 basic maxims of Islamic law by consensus. Darar is not accepted. And when our fuqaha talk about that, they say even darar which is less than darar. Because they have the definition, what is darar? And they will say even things that are less than that, like things that are haraj shadid. La budda an yuzal. So if a child is abused, if a woman is abused, if a man is abused, we don't tell them, have patience, live with this. That is generally a type of khiyana and cowardice. And often it's because of the fact that if we're talking to men about this, a lot of them are not very courageous when it comes to talking to other men. And they would rather tell you, just be patient. And that's not right. That's not right. The victim has rights, and the victim must be defended. And we have scandals in our communities. All human beings do. If we cannot deal with our scandals honestly and courageously, we are not worth the trust of anyone on earth. Scandals, bring to light realities that we don't sweep under the carpet. And we don't say that, no, but if you say something about this person, maybe he was an imam. I'm sorry, but he is a fasiq. And he is the wali of shaitan if he did these things. And we don't defend him, we don't defend his school. We don't defend anything he stands for. We can't do that. If we do that, we are destroying ourselves. We have no credibility after that. And usually we have no courage at all. We're cowards. And how many things in the Muslim world are done by certain groups of people? And the people who belong to that group won't say a word, because that's my group. And ta'assub, which is when we have prejudice to support our party, this is one of the biggest veils of all. And it is hateful. And you may be right, and your school may be really good, and it may be wonderful, but if you don't have the courage to speak up for the oppressed and the victims, your school is worth nothing. And no one will take you seriously. We have to be honest. That's very difficult for many of us. Very, very difficult. You have a right to get your right. You have an obligation to stand up for the oppressed. And it is not acceptable that we suffer through abuse and harm. This is not acceptable. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. God does not love, in other words, God will punish, outward expression of evil, of harm that's been done. For example, in word, if we express it in word, إِلَّا مَنْ ظُلِمْ, except for the one who has been oppressed. That person has a right. In a hadith transmitted by Bukhari and Muslim, متفق عليه, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن لصاحب الحق مقالا. The person who has a right, the person who has a right that has been encroached upon, has a right to speak. Has a right to speak. In another hadith, which is also sahih, the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, لَيُّ الْوَاجِدِ يُحِلُّ عِرْضَهُ وَعُقُوبَتَهُ. لَيُّ الْوَاجِدِ يُحِلُّ عِرْضَهُ وَعُقُوبَتَهُ. Let's translate this as follows. The wajid is a wealthy person. When the wealthy person, meaning here, the wealthy person who has a debt to pay off, but he doesn't pay off her debt, or she doesn't pay off her debt without a valid reason, then his honor, his ird, and his punishment have become halal. Okay, then you have a right to speak about him. Again, you shouldn't lie. You don't make up things that are not true, but you have a right to speak out. And this person should be punished. And the punishment, should be effective. It should be adequate. Number two, we may have to speak the truth about people in order to change a munkar, something which is wrong, something which is objectionable, or to bring a disobedient person back to the path of goodness and righteousness, so that they leave it, so that they do tawbah, and so that they reform their lives. And so this may require, and these are all different situations, it may require that we speak to the ruler or to an influential person in the community, to a leader or to an imam or to someone else that has authority and influence. Again, this is not a complaint. This is an intent to bring about the transformation of that person. Not just that I don't like them, I'm sick of them, and now I'm going to tell the whole world about them. No, you do this because you want to change that situation and you want to make it right. And again, this would probably be done in private. And it would probably be done with great wisdom. You don't get up and speak in front of the mosque or something like that. Let's take an example. And again, the Salaf as-Salih, the first generations, these people are the best of all human beings who ever lived after the messengers and the prophets. And when you look at what they did, you see that over and over again. This is a true story about the Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, who is one of the best human beings who ever walked on God's earth, one of the most intelligent, one of the most courageous, one of the most merciful. And Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, loved Umar ibn al-Khattab with a love second to none. That's the truth. We could talk about that a lot. Big Umar and little Umar. And they also, Ahlul Bayt, they have Umar and Uthman and Abu Bakr. Ja'far as-Sadiq, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, I am honored that I am related to Abu Bakr by two lines, two maternal lines. So Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, was told in Medina the story of Abu Jandal. Abu Jandal was a Syrian, and he was from Jaysh al-Sham. And Abu Jandal was a really strong man, very powerful man. And in the conquests of Umar al-Faruq, may Allah be pleased with him, Abu Jandal played a big role. He was a hero. And then, after that, he began to drink. And in fact, he virtually became an alcoholic. And he disappeared from the public eye. He was ashamed of himself. And he didn't want anyone to see him. Umar loved Abu Jandal. And so he asked, where is Abu Jandal? And someone told him the story. Okay, now that's Ghibah. That's Ghibah. But they told Umar the story because he wanted to know, and because once he knew, he would do something about it. What did Umar do about it? He wrote a letter. And again, how long was the letter? 2 lines? Or 3? What did he say? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Min Umar ila Abi Jandal. حاميم تنزيل الكتاب من الله العزيز العليم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب ذي الطول لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير. Verses of the Quran, as you know. Hamim. By the revelation of the book, the revelation of the book is from God. Al-Aziz al-Alim, God who's all-powerful, all-knowing, always accepting, always forgiving sins, ghafir them, always forgiving. That's what it means, the fa'il here. Always forgiving sins. قابل التوبة. Wrote that letter, he made dua for Abu Jandal in front of all the Sahaba in Medina, and he asked them to say Ameen, and they said Ameen. And then they sent the letter to Abu Jandal, and he read it over and over again. He read it out loud, over and over again. And he would say to himself, God has promised that he will forgive me. And God has warned me of severe punishment if I don't turn back. And then he began to cry. And then he did tawbah. And they brought that news to Umar, and Umar was extremely happy. And he praised God, and he said, this is the way that we should deal with our brothers, and of course our sisters. And do not help Satan destroy them. Again, unfortunately today, many people who may be very committed Muslims, believe in the religion, but they're very stern, they're very unwise, and essentially most of the things they say are said unwisely, improperly, severely, and what they do is actually help Satan destroy the person they're talking to, and usually, this is what they don't know, they're also helping Satan to destroy themselves. And that often happens. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Everything in this story about Umar, none of that is ghibah. Well, it is, you're telling the truth, about the person. But again, this had to be done. And again, Umar did this in a way that was tarbiyah and ta'lim. This is spiritual education, and this is ta'lim. Number 3, to give a fatwa. So, a person may have to tell the scholar or the mufti that such and such is happening. Or that my father, my mother, my spouse, my brother, my sister wronged me, or did such and such. Okay, so what do I do in that situation? How do I get out of that situation? Imam al-Ghazali says, nevertheless, although this is permissible, ta'reed is the best policy. Ta'reed is roundabout speaking. In other words, is it really necessary that you say your father? Is it really necessary that you say your brother? Couldn't you just mention the case? Of course, sometimes we could do that and the person would still know that it's his or her father. But he said, if you can do ta'reed, if you can get around it with roundabout speech, that's better. As we said before you allow yourself to do ghibah, try to find an alternative. Try to find a way out. And try to avoid specific reference. Again, one of the amazing stories of the Sahaba, Ridwanullahi alayhim, is the story that you all know of Hind bint Utbah. This was one of the greatest enemies of Islam. This was the wife of Abu Sufyan, as you know. And yet she became a believer after the conquest of Mecca, and she took Bay'atun Nisa, and that's a famous story. We've talked about it before, because she said she's a hurra, as the Prophet said in Bay'atun Nisa, وَلَا تَزْنِي. And of course she was covered, they didn't know who she was. She said, Al-hurra tazni, would a free woman commit adultery? And so the Prophet knew, this is Hind. This is Hind, right? And Hind, when she took the bay'ah, she went home and she took a qadum. Qadum we call in English an azd. An azd, it's like you hold it in the hand, it has a pick. And she took a little idol that she had worshipped and she began to chip it apart. And as she chipped it apart, she said, Kunna minka fi ghurur. We were deceived by you, She shatters her little idol. Allah bless her, Allah be pleased with her. She was a great woman. And her tawbah was completely accepted. And we say, radiyallahu anha. And radiyallahu an Abi Sufyan. You know, once a person came to Shaykh Abd-Al-Qadir al-Jilani, may Allah be pleased with him. And Shaykh Abd-Al-Qadir al-Jilani is a Hassani Husseini, as you probably know. He's a complete Ahlul Bayt. And this person said, Shaykh Abd-Al-Qadir al-Jilani, you've done so much in the world, so many people have become Muslims through you. What do you think about Muawiyah? And Shaykh Abd-Al-Qadir al-Jilani said, I am not worth the dust under the feet of his camel when he did jihad alongside the Prophet. Okay, so radiallahu anhum, we don't sully our tongues with lies, and we don't sully our tongues with bad opinion. But when Hind came to the Prophet, she came to the Prophet then after that for a fatwa. About who? Abu Sufyan. And what did she say? Inna Abu Sufyan rajulun shahih la yu'tini ma yakfini ana wa waladi afa akhudhu min ghayri ilmihi. This is Ghibah, big time. And this is Ghibah to the whole world. Because here we are in Cairo in 2005 saying this about Abu Sufyan radiallahu anhu. But you know, she said, Abu Sufyan is shahih. He is a very avaricious man. He doesn't give me what is enough for me or my children. So should I take from his wealth without his knowing? And the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, khudi ma yakfiki wa waladaki bil ma'ruf. So take what is enough for you and your children, according to ma'ruf, according to what is standard, normally known to be good. So here she explicitly mentioned her husband forever, for the whole world. And she said he had shuh, which is extreme bukhl. Again, may we all have shuh, but in our hasanat. That, may we save our hasanat. I don't want to give any hasanat away. May we all have hasanat. But, may we not say things so that they're all taken away. So, this was not haram ghibah. And the Prophet, of course, did iqrar. He affirmed that what she did was acceptable. He didn't say anything. And so this also is a sunnah. Number 4, to warn others of evil. So it may be that a person has incorrect belief, and we mean by this seriously incorrect belief. And also bid'ah. And we mean by this haram bid'ah. Everything new is a bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. This is a bid'ah. Bid'ah always has 5 types. There are bid'ah, there are innovations that are obligatory. There are innovations that are recommended. There are innovations that are mubah. There are innovations that are makruh. There are innovations that are haram. What is a wajib bid'ah? Well, let's not get this wrong. Did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam compile the Quran into a mushaf sharif? No. That was the work of Abu Bakr and of Umar radiallahu anhuma, and that was a bid'ah. It was something new that the Prophet hadn't done. In fact, Abu Bakr even asked radiallahu anhu, can I do what the Prophet didn't do? And Umar made it very clear in the both of them that we have to do this. So this is bid'ah wajiba, mahmuda, khalida, samawiyah. It is called irshad, rushd and rashad. Okay, so the fact that something is new doesn't mean very much. We have to be able to appraise it. But if it is an evil bid'ah, and many of the people that are saying bid'ah, what they say is bid'ah. And the way they say it is bid'ah. You may have to warn people about that. And also we may have to warn people of other people's perversity, their fisq. And it may be, and especially in this time, That some people are not to be trusted with children. Some people may not be trusted with women. Some women may not be trusted with children and other things. So there are times when we have to speak to protect. And we have to be careful not to be deceived in this. In other words, be careful not to get it wrong. And also be careful that we are not motivated by hasad, by jealousy. And be careful not to go too far. Don't go beyond what is needed. And there are many cases where this may be necessary. For example, marriage proposals. So we do need to know about this man. And we do need to know about this woman. And then there are other things as well, like, for example, in a court of law. The judge in Islamic law has to know that the witness is acceptable. So there has to be tazkiyah, there has to be the validation of the witness, and that also involves ghibah. In the science of hadith, we had ilm al-rijal, which tells us about the commentator, about the transmitters. Was he a good person? Was he a bad person? Did he have a good memory? Did he lose his memory? Did he have some kind of bid'ah or innovation? So this is backbiting. But it was necessary to do that. And we call it ilm al-rijal, the science of the men. So what about women? And one of the interesting things about ilm al-rijal, they're also there. But never in the history of Islam, to my knowledge, was a woman, muhaddith, and there are thousands of them, guilty of lying. That's very interesting. The ones guilty of lying were these kind, not the women. And the greatest transmitters of hadith were usually women, like Karima bint Ahmad, for example. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani valued his transmission of al-Bukhari from Karima bint Ahmad more than anyone, because she was the best of the best. There was also a great Hanafi woman who was probably the greatest Hanafi scholar who ever was. Who was that? Fatima bint Muhammad as-Samarqandi of Halab. She's not of Samarqand, she's of Halab. And she was the personal counselor of Nuruddin Zengi. And she knew Al-Qutb al-Ghawth, Shaykh Abdul Jilani. She was also said to be the most beautiful woman of her time. And no one in fiqh was like her, or in usul al-fiqh. Her husband Al-Kashani, who wrote Bada'i al-Sana'i', his mahar was Bada'i al-Sana'i', which was a commentary of her father's book. And then she had been asked to marry princes and kings. But she married Kashani because of his commentary. And he would never give a fatwa unless her father signed it, and then she signed it, and he would sign it last. When her father died, then she would sign it first, and then he would sign it. So she was, we have many great women in Islam. Many great women in Islam. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they say about this hadith, hadithun lahu aslun thabit. It is a hadith that has a strong foundation. It itself is not of the strongest sanad, but we can trust it. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "At-tari'un an dhikr al-fajr." Tari'un is from wara'. Do you have the wara'? So much wara' that you can't mention the fajr? Are you all held back by wara', by your dignity, from mentioning the fujur, the corruption of the corrupt person, of the fajr? اهتكوه متى يعرفه الناس اذكروه بما فيه حتى يحذره الناس. فهذا حديث له أصل ثابت. Are you all held back by wara', by your own goodness, from mentioning the fujur of the fajr, the perversity of the perverse person, the corruption of the corrupt person? Expose him. Remove his sitr. That's what this is saying. Ihtikuhu. Rip apart his sitr. So that when people know the truth about him, mata ya'rifu nas. This is, shart. When people know the truth about him, they will be safe from him. That's what it means. It's got hadf. Mata ya'rifu nas. Yakunu mahfudhin minhu. Something like that, see? And then he says, mention him according to what is in him, so that people can beware of him and not be deceived by him. So here, the gharad, the motive is clear. People must be protected from this kind of person. And good opinion must not make us naive or expose us and our communities to manipulation and harm at the expense, through the exploitation of evil people and hypocrites. Number 5. When is it permissible to do ghibah? Number 5. When they have nicknames that they like. Okay, like Al-A'raj. He's one of the greatest of the successors. But it means the man with the limp. So you couldn't say huwa a'raj. But he says, ana al-a'raj. So you can say that. Al-A'mash, who's also another great man, which means that he's partially blind. Al-Jahiz, which means pop-eyed. He has eyes that stick out. Al-Ahdab, hunchback. Okay, Abu Sha'tha, person who's got messy hair, right? Although Imam al-Ghazali said you could look for an alternative. Of course, in Islam we have many beautiful examples of the way we talk about certain things. Usually, in this country and other country, we don't say a person is a'ma, right? What do we say? We might say huwa basir, meaning huwa basir al-qalb, right? That he sees clearly, meaning with his heart, even though he can't see with his physical eyes. May Allah protect our eyes. Humayd al-Tawil, Humayd the tall. It's one of the greatest muhaddiths of all. And he was the peer of Imam Malik in Imam Malik's time. Imam Malik was called Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith. He was a huge muhaddith. Number 2 in his time, according to some, was Humayd al-Tawil. How tall was he? He was very short. He was very short. He wasn't tall at all. But they called him Humayd al-Tawil because he was very tall in his knowledge. Number 6, when the person is open and blatant in his or her fisq, in their perversity. They sit in bars, they drink openly, they do other things. Okay, so here they have torn the cover off themselves, and therefore they don't have that same right. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man alqa julbab al-haya'i an wajhihi fala ghibata lah." That whoever casts off the julbab, the garment, the overgarment of haya, of shame, from his face, there's no ghibah in that person. In fact, as such people are not bothered if you say anything about them, because they maybe even take pride in that. To them, that we would use with each other, it encourages them to do what they're doing. So this is very different, as you can see clearly, from the fasiq or fasiqa, Allah protect us all, who conceals his fisq or hers. Because that person, you have no right to reveal what they have hidden, unless we have to do that for some reason, like the reasons we have mentioned. As long as the person is mustatar, is covered, his or her sitr has hurma. Don't you be the one to rip it apart. Ibn Sirin, this is a story I love very much. Ibn Sirin, who's one of the greatest of the great, he was told of a man who was publicly cursing and reviling Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi harmed us a great deal. He killed many good people, many innocent people. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, who was one of the teachers of Imam Abu Hanifa, he wanted to kill Ibrahim. And he sent his people into a mosque where Ibrahim al-Nakha'i was. And Ibrahim was able to get out of the mosque, and do you know what happened? One of the students of Ibrahim said, I am Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, so that he be killed in the place of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. He has a great shahada and Allah. So this person now was reviling and cursing Al-Hajjaj. Of course, Al-Hajjaj was dead. He wouldn't have done that if Al-Hajjaj was alive, because he would have parted company with his head very quickly. He was saying this, maybe because also he wanted to show how brave he was, you see. Because you'd never talk about Al-Hajjaj when he was alive, so now he's out saying these things about him. Whatever his motivation was, Ibn Sirin came to him. ذنب عملته قط أعظم عليك من أعظم ذنب عمله الحجاج واعلم أن الله تعالى عدل إن أخذ من الحجاج لمن ظلمه فسيأخذ للحجاج ممن ظلمه ولا تشتغلن نفسك بسب أحد. Again, these words are so precious, aren't they? These people knew how to use their tongues. These were people who were fusaha, and that's because their qulub were fusaha. Their qulub were fasiha. So he said, you, whoever you are, ayyuha rajul, calm down. Calm down for a minute. Take it easy. When you meet Allah in the hereafter, or he said, when you meet Allah in the hereafter, the smallest sin you have ever done will be more immense, heavier upon you than the greatest sin that Al-Hajjaj ever did. You'll be asked about yourself. You won't be asked about Al-Hajjaj. And know that God, exalted be He, is just. Even if He will surely take Al-Hajjaj to task for the oppression he did, He will also surely take to task, for the sake of Al-Hajjaj, anyone who did wrong to him. Never let yourself be busied or preoccupied by reviling or cursing anyone. There's a lot we could say here, and you might say, but doesn't this contradict what was said above? Maybe we don't have to go into that, but one of the interesting things about Al-Hajjaj is that when he died, of course he did horrible things, but when he died, according to some transmissions, his last words were to the effect that no one believes, oh God, no one believes that you will forgive me. No one on earth believes you will forgive me, so will you forgive me? And this probably is part of the background to this story, because Al-Hajjaj did terrible things. No question about that. But then, what was the nature of his death? And again, we're not going to say that this makes everything that he did right. No, it doesn't. But again, it's like, and Ibn Sirin is saying, there's no need for you to do this. And this is, I believe, extremely good advice. Again, in Islam, we do not declare anyone to be a kafir because of kaba'ir, because of major sins. We don't do that. And so there's great wisdom in this story and all these stories. Reviling and cursing is extremely destructive, even of bad people like Al-Hajjaj, much less of people that are good. And when people curse the good, then these people are hamir. And especially, God forbid, one who would curse or revile Abu Bakr or Umar or Uthman or others, they are hamir. Let's be clear about that. And why are they hamir? Because all of their good deeds that they did will be given to Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, like a himar. And then all the bad deeds, not of those people, they don't have many, if any, but of their followers, they will be put on them. May Allah protect our tongues. How to atone for ghibah? We're going over time, are we? But let me do this because I want to finish this. How do we atone for ghibah? Imam al-Ghazali tells us that whenever we have done ghibah, we must truly regret it. Because as you probably know, this is the first requirement of tawbah, that I am sorry I did this. And then also we have to be intent not to do it again. I am sorry I did this, what a fool I was. And I intend not to do this again. Stop it. And then you stop it. So these three are very important. These are min shurut at-tawbah. And then, he said, when you do this, this will remove Allah's claim from you. Of course, as you know, with ghibah, the very difficult aspect of it is that that person has a claim. Even if it's Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, he has a claim, or she. So, second, after that, if possible and if reasonable, you must ask the person you did ghibah of to release you from their claim. Okay? From haqq al-ibad. This is haqq al-ibad. The other is haqq Allah. You can get out of that easily. Allah is merciful. But haqq al-ibad, that's not so easy. And they ought to do that, but they may not do that. Don't expect them to do that. And here I want to point out that the Salaf as-Salih, may Allah be pleased with them, they disagreed on this point. Should you do istihlal? Should you ask the person to put you in hil or not? The position of Imam al-Ghazali and many of the Imam is that you should. But this is a point of disagreement. Some say that you shouldn't do that because that can in fact lead to greater harm. All of this is situational. So there may be people where indeed we can do that. And there may be ways that we can do it. And there may be other people that would just make things worse. Imam al-Ghazali says, even if you do that, even if you ask the person to release you from the claim that I talked about you, I said things they're true, but you don't want them to be said. Be sure that there's no hypocrisy in that. Because some people will go through these motions to show how pious they are. And some people may go through these motions just to make it worse. Could you imagine, for example, someone who comes and, oh, I told people you were so ugly. I told people you stutter. I told people you're an idiot. Please forgive me. Right? And what you're doing is just repeating it to hurt that person. May Allah not make us like that. That, of course, would be very rare. But there are cases of that. Also, be sure that it doesn't bring greater harm. Imam al-Ghazali says that, and it's, of course, because of the fact that it may indeed bring greater harm, that some of the Salaf say you shouldn't do it at all. So, what do? Whatever you do, make dua for that person. Ask Allah to forgive that person. And as we said many times, this will also be hard on Satan. And maybe Satan won't play with you like a child plays with a ball and kicks it around the room. Many of the Salaf insisted on this, that you make dua, you ask forgiveness, and not istihlal. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كفارة من ارتبته أن تستغفر له. So this is a hadith, that the atonement of the person you have backbitten is that you ask forgiveness for them. Mujahid, may Allah be pleased with him, who's a great successor, he said the atonement is to praise them in public, but without lying, and to find something good to say about them, while also making dua for them. So that's a good opinion. And again, so I've spoken bad about this person in public. Let me now speak good about that person in public. But don't let it be a lie. Again, you can lie to defend them. That's different. That's on the spot. And then they also said, busy yourself with hasanat. Okay? Because you may need a lot of them. You gave away, you're so generous. I'm so generous with my hasanat sometimes. So let's get some more. We're going to need a lot, right? Also, try to endear yourself to them by tawaddud. Tawaddad ilayhim. Try to endear yourself. Try to become their friend. وَالَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِمْ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ. Allah says, those who are patient, seeking the countenance of their Lord, who establish prayer, who spend of that which we have given them privately and openly, these are the people that will have uqba dar, the great end, the great place to live in the end, the great refuge in the end. وَيَدْرَؤُونَ الْحَسَنَةَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ. You say, and they repel, they substitute the bad deed with a good deed. So we always want to do that, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. And they say that in this verse, وَالَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا, that here, sabr means to have the sabr, to obey and not to disobey God, in all the things that we do. إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ السَّيِّئَةِ. Push away the bad deed, by that which is good. Okay? So let's stop here. What time is it? We have 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, and what should we begin with? This or that? Okay, and we have these, and we have, let's maybe look at this one. Lots of questions, 15 minutes. Okay, well, I like this one. If you want to have good character, how and where do you start? The stomach. Good character begins in the stomach. And this is learning how to eat properly, not to overeat, to chew properly, to have etiquette at the table. And it's very good to work on our children in this way. One of the first things to teach children is how to eat, to share food, not to throw food, and to eat what's on the plate. So again, be merciful to them. If they don't like this thing, don't give them too much, and maybe you can mix it with something they like. Okay, but good character begins in the stomach. And that's very important because also it's something we can maybe deal with. Just like when we began talking about speech, we talked about things like excessive speech. And we talked about speaking about things that don't concern us. And as Imam al-Ghazali says, those are very minor offenses as a rule. But again, that's very good for you, because this is where you can practice. Once we begin to cut down on fudul al-kalam, and al-kalam fima la ya'nina, in speech that doesn't concern us, then little by little we can begin to do bigger things. Like, to make sure that what we say is true, what we say is not harmful, and what we say is beneficial. And again, when we talked about fudul al-kalam, we said that always when you eat, this is good health. Of course, we violate it all the time. And of course, especially when we're guests, because you have to be good to your host. And sometimes when I go to a generous host, and all the hosts are generous that I know, and I remember in Spain, our beloved brother Abdul Samad and his wife Maimuna, they told me on the last day, you have to eat in our house. So I didn't say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. But I just said that when I go to their house, whatever they put on my plate, I'm going to eat it. Maybe I can fast for a week after that. Okay, but I'm not going to turn them down, because also the host has a right. The host has a right. But good character begins in the stomach. And that's why, especially when you're by yourself, you don't want to overeat. And you want to eat things that are good, and you always want to chew your food, swallow your food, enjoy your food. And then after you've done that, do I really need to eat another bite? This is good character. And again, it's becoming aware. And a lot of us, we just eat, we don't even think about the food. And the same thing when we speak. Do I really need to say another word? Haven't I said enough? When we write, do I really need to say this other sentence? And those of you who write, you know that the editor's red pen is to be praised. And the good editor will tell you, strike this, strike this, strike this. And you'll see that if you do that, what you wrote will be so much better. So good character begins in the stomach. Is it something attainable if you don't have it? What a good question. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the foundation of transcendental humanism. And one of our brothers asked about that tonight. By transcendental humanism, we mean being able to go above yourself, being able to become better, striving to be the best you can possibly be. Okay, what is khuluq? What is character? We talk about husnul khuluq, su'ul khuluq. What is character? Of course, honor, of course, courage, generosity, honesty, trustworthiness, and so forth. These are things we would think of, but they're not khuluq. They are acts of khuluq. They're akhlaq, we call them that. But khuluq is something intangible. Yani we say khuluq hay'atun fil nafs. It is something intangible that you have in you that makes it easy for you to do certain things without thinking. That's your khuluq. So it may be easy for you to be friendly. Then alhamdulillah, you have the good khuluq of friendliness. It may be easy for you to be unfriendly. Some people are like that. So you have that khuluq. And maybe that's not the best khuluq. It may be easy for you to be generous, and it may be difficult for you to be generous. So that's your khuluq. Can you change that? Yes, yes, yes. And how do you do that? By takhalluq. So, if a person is a coward, that's their khuluq. It's easy for him or her to run away. It's very difficult for him or her to stand their ground. What do you do about that? Well, first of all, keep the company of courageous people. It will rub off. And then you do the takhalluq of things that pertain to courage. Okay, little by little, and then you can get it. Khuluq can change. And this is what we call mujahada. Not easy to do it, but you can do it. And when you do it, you usually need to have companions. You need to have friends. You need to have helpers. And maybe you need to have a coach. You know, who does anything and in athletics that's worth anything without a coach? Nobody. Nobody. You can take an athlete like Jim Brown. I don't know if you know who Jim Brown was. He was my hero as a boy. He was one of the most powerful football players ever. And he was graceful as a dancer. And I used to watch him every Sunday. And, you know, he was just incredible. Okay? So, why in the world did I mention Jim Brown? Yeah, okay, thank you. I got carried away. I forgot myself. I really love Jim Brown. That's the truth. That's the truth. He was a fantastic football player. And, but he had to have a coach. He had to have a coach. So we also need to have coaches, but this is possible. It is possible to change our character. May Allah make our character the best possible, and that is the chief objective of transcendental humanism. This person says, how can we detach ourselves from our fears and our worries? I wanted to respond to that question for personal reasons. I became a Muslim in 1970. In fact, January the 2nd, 1970, which is my mother's birthday. And January 2nd is her birthday. And the steps that led up to that were several. They went back for years. But the immediate key that opened the door was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I love Malcolm X, and I loved Malcolm X. And I started reading his autobiography the night before, and I read it all night long. I didn't sleep that night. I read it all night long, and basically in the morning I became a Muslim. But there was a hook in that book. And usually if you're a speaker or a writer, you want to look for hooks. And what is a hook? A hook is something you say that hooks the person. So they keep reading or they keep listening. For me, the hook was that Malcolm said, may Allah be pleased with him and may Allah have mercy on him, Islam is the religion that abolishes fear. And at that time, I had lots of anxieties. I didn't believe in anything, and I knew that I should believe. And, you know, so my life was filled with anxieties and fears, even though I would like to say on my own behalf, may Allah make this honest, I'm not a coward, and I wasn't a coward. But I was filled with anxieties and fears, and it's like, is that possible? A religion, I know that there are other things that could do that, but is it possible that Islam, a religion, could abolish fear? And I read the book all night. That's the reason why I did it. And then at the end of reading the book, I put it down, and it was about 7 a.m. in the morning. It was a beautiful day. It was about 10 below zero, and there was new snow everywhere. The sun was bright in the sky. I could open my window. There was Lake Cayuga in front of me. I was up on a hill. And I sat down and I said, what did you learn from this book? I said that God and Allah are the same. Big breakthrough for me, because I've been brought up in the church where Allah is another God. So Allah and God are the same. And the second was that he exists because he guided Malcolm. You can see that. What happened in Malcolm's life is not a coincidence. So in any case, this religion, if we take it and follow it directly, it will release all fears. And may you believe that, and may whoever wrote the question and cares about that, may you experience that also. This religion is absolutely amazing. لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. The awliya of Allah, may Allah make us among them. There's no fear on them. They're not afraid of creation. ولا هم يحزنون. And they don't have any sadness about what happened in the past, even though what happened in the past may be very painful and may have been very harmful, but they have no huzn. How is time? I'm trying to get off the hook. I don't really like to answer questions. I don't know if you know that, but not one of my favorite things. So let's see if we have another question. Do you recommend that I answer one of these questions? This one? Okay. Is backbiting always involving mentioning the name of the person, or saying someone and keeping the person anonymous to one we are talking to? Is it also considered backbiting? Very good question. And the answer is yes. Backbiting is usually when we say the person's name. But backbiting can also be when we don't say their name at all. But everybody knows who we're talking about. And we may use the most roundabout ways of speaking, but they know who you're talking about. And this is why in backbiting we say at-ta'ridu kat-tasrih. That roundabout speaking is just like being explicit. The thing is, do people understand it's that person or not? And I think there are some complexities there, because it might be that when we're speaking like that, we hit other people too, that they think we're talking about, but we're not. And so what would be the moral judgment on that? I'm not sure that I know, but we have to guard our tongues. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to enable us to do that. The heart is everything. And when we talk about the heart, this is not talking about something spiritual or spooky. This is talking about the deen itself. Because everything in us, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, actions are in accord with intentions. Intentions are in the heart. Intentions are of the heart. If the heart is right, everything is right. If the heart is wrong, everything is wrong. And this is why the ulama would say that, and Imam al-Ghazali says this, and others say this, that if your heart is sick, not that you have heart disease, you could take care of that with a physician. But if your spiritual heart is sick, that it is fard ayn, an individual obligation to find someone who can cure it, even if you have to travel. So this is why it's very important when we talk about the heart, especially today, that people understand that this is not a spiritual matter. This is essential Islam. And when the heart is not taken care of, the whole edifice of Islam collapses. And one of the problems we have today with some of our brothers and sisters is systematic superficiality. All they care about is the length of your thawb, the length of your beard, whether your hair is showing or not. Okay, now it's not to say that these things are not important, but these are outward things. What about the heart? What about khuluq? What about other? These are the things that really count. And when that is missing, all the other talk is empty and also very, very harmful. We ask Allah to give us understanding, and we ask Allah to enable us all to be wise in the way they speak. All of us. Ameen. Allahumma waffiqna lima tuhibbuhu wa tardah, وجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. آمين آمين آمين. Thank you so much for coming these 10 nights and warming the tent and being an incredibly wonderful audience. And I thank the people online, but I can't see them. I know they're there too. And we should pray for each other, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and may Allah put bonds between our hearts that never break. Some people have talked about the media. We talked about it ourselves. The media in our time is extremely powerful, and you don't have to be told anything about that. And the media uses techniques which are so subtle, they're like magic. And people who work in the media industry know that very well. And I know some people like that. They say, you would not believe what they are doing, what they know they're doing. In fact, some of them said, we can't compete with this. I won't say that. We need to have our media. And we need to use the internet and social media the best we possibly can. But there's one thing I believe is very important, and this is something also that many people, many non-Muslims would agree with. There is nothing like personal interaction. Who is the man who wrote The Tipping Point? Gladwell, is that his name? Sorry? Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote The Tipping Point and he wrote something else. Huh? What did he wrote?
Outliers.
I'm sorry?
Outliers.
That one I don't know, but there's another book? Blink. Yeah, I don't know that third one. I haven't read that, but Blink I read, Tipping Point I read. And this is one thing that Gladwell talks about also, is how personal contact is so important. Even he talks about people he calls connectors. People who, connect with people and know people. But the thing is that personal interactions, face to face, these are so powerful. Never play them down. And we have to take that seriously, because these interactions, these do have powerful effect. And I have heard from people that, I know people who in 2005, for example, were trying to put together in the United States a big program. And they had good intentions. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. But they wanted to do something to try to change the attitude towards Islam and Islamophobia before it got any worse. And one of the things they emphasize, and these are people who are in public relations and other things, is that nothing takes the place of personal interaction. And that personal interaction, even though it may not have much quantity to it, but it has huge quality. And it does affect people. And the media whatever it puts in our mind, it's got to keep putting in our mind. And it will be forgotten just like this. This is one of the media's big problems. It's got to keep drumming this message home. But in personal relations, you don't have to do that. Personal relations create bonds that change our lives in many cases. I know a brother, I haven't seen him for many years, he's from Maryland, and he's a Muslim, he's in Maryland politics, his name is Umar, like mine, and he emphasized that to me in the 1990s, that he said that in the state capital of Maryland, he said it's very clear in his experience that those people who have Muslim friends in the Capitol building, and who have had good experiences from these Muslim friends, it's very difficult to convince them of the negative things the media is saying. Because he said in his experience, most of them will always balance that against you. And so we want to work very hard on cultivating personal relations. And we must give time to that. And don't ever think that's a waste of time. If only you could get on television and speak to 1 million people. No, it might make them feel good tonight or have questions tonight. Forget about it tomorrow. In most cases. But personal relations don't. So may Allah make the bonds between us bonds that last forever. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I've been asked to just remind everyone that tonight is our last class. In honor of our Shaykh, Shaykh Muhammad al-Jailani and Dr.Umar Abd-Allah, there will be a hafla tomorrow, as was mentioned at the beginning of the session. It's a very special performance by some Syrian Murshideen. The Mar'ashli family, some of you may be familiar with them. They will begin tomorrow here at 7:30 p.m. in this tent. We hope that you will all be able to join us. It promises to be a very uplifting evening and a good way